Hello everyone. I am Alice of KHR Arts and Cloud Orchid Publishing, and today we are going to talk about Marked Territory. Now, this is a vlog review of the book Marked Territory by Neal Litherland, and I do want to preface this by saying, yes, Neal Litherland is my partner, so of course I have a bit of a bias in that I think that this book is fantastic, but my unbiased opinion about this book is that I do think that it is very well written and it is super fun to read. So let's get into it. Marked Territory is best described as a hard-boiled detective story from the perspective of a New York alley cat. Yes, you heard me right. An alley cat. His name is Leo, and he is a fluffy cat. He's a Maine Coon, and he is a bruiser. He gets into brawls. He protects other animals in his community, and first and foremost, he is a detective for hire and sometimes is the muscle for hire as well. So this story starts off with that he is asked for help by this particular mouse that her and her family are going to lose their home, and can he please look into it and do something about it. That is how our story starts, and it's fascinating to see all of this from the perspective of street animals. And this is in New York City, in the actual city itself, with all the skyscrapers and the buses and the subway system and all that. And we're following this stray alley cat as he's interacting with rats and mice and raccoons and possums. And it's just so cool to see the choices that the author made with what kinds of personalities and what kinds of jobs we're going to assign to these different animals and why. And they are personified to a certain extent, but there are a lot of parts of the story that remind us that these are animals. They are not people, and therefore do not have the same sort of empathy and goals that people have. For instance, I will put a trigger warning on this story that there are some scenes that are violent, and one of them is particularly graphic, and it actually made me very sad and upset to read. But that's because on a personal level, I owned a pet rabbit whom I loved. He passed away a few years ago of old age, very comfortably in his sleep. But yeah, there is a scene where a bunny gets attacked and dies, and it's really sad and it's rather graphic. So just a warning that that is in there. And there are some other violent scenes as well, but you have to take it with a grain of salt of that these are street animals, and street animals get into fights, and street animals die, unfortunately. So that is important to take in with reading this story, that these are the sorts of things that are going to happen. But there are a lot of really amazing scenes of also how these animals come together to create this community of sorts. They have their own interpersonal communities, and then how these different communities come together as a larger community of animals versus humans. And this isn't like an Animal Farm sort of animals versus humans thing. It's more so of how people who live in cities live alongside animals on a daily basis. That when you're waiting for the train on the subway, you see rats hanging out, and you as a person are not really doing anything to interact with the rats, and the rats aren't really doing anything to interact with you as a person, as a rat. Y'all are just kind of going about your A to B separately, but also coexisting at the same time. So that's kind of the animals versus humans vibe in this story, is that they live in their own separate worlds, but those worlds do intersect sometimes. So I highly recommend this book because it is fast-paced, it is jam-packed with action, storyline just grabs you and does not let go. It was very hard for me to put this book down. I ate it as fast as I could. I ignored several tasks that I was supposed to do on the days that I did read it just so that I could spend more time reading it. It really grabs you by the seat of your pants. It's a really great book. If you are a fan of the old noir hard-boiled detective books, this is really going to resonate with you. I personally am not a fan of that, so I know that a lot of those kind of references went right over my head. But from what I've heard from other people who have read this book talk about it, that there are so many nods to those old black and white movies and those old books. So you'll definitely get those nods that I didn't necessarily get. And if I enjoyed this book with all of that going over my head, I'm sure it'll be even more amazing for those of y'all that are really big fans of that particular genre. Finally, I will say that I don't believe I can describe the ending of this book to be a happy ending, but it is definitely an ending where everything is kind of tied with as neat of a bow as it can be, especially with this particular type of genre. Things don't traditionally end happily ever after or neatly tied with a bow, but things end as well as they can given the circumstances, as well as there is a sequel to this book called Painted Cats, which I have yet to read. It is on my to-read list, and hopefully soon I'll be able to provide y'all with a review of that. And Neal is hard at work working on the third book for this series, so be sure to stay tuned for that. So there is definitely more fun to be had with Leo and the other animals in this world beyond just marked territory. I hope y'all liked this video. If you did, please be sure to give it a like, and if you're new, subscribe. All right, y'all, thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye bye.